Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Bacon and Coffee. Excited to have you. Got a great guest today. Before we get started, I'm going to start with our 30-second countdown. Here we go. And of course, it would not be complete without our caffeine and bovine intro. Here we go, peeps, and then we'll get to our guest. All right. Good morning, everybody. How you doing? We have in the house today Miss Lori Bruhns. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, you did well. Wonderful.
Excellent. Yeah, because I could call you Bruins, as in the Boston Bruins, which is hockey season, but we're not going to go there. And for those of you watching live, you'll see that her little tag is cut off. It says Lori Bruins having it Al. Who's Al?
Well, actually, we're going to have it all.
I like having it all. So today we're going to be talking about GSD, which is one of my favorite things. We're in the middle of a house remodel, and in the house remodel, it is filled with GSD. You know, you have to GSD. You have to make sure the dog doesn't walk on the newly, oiled wood floors. You got to make sure you move the furniture. You got, all these different things to do. And one of the things that is very common in this is overwhelm. Right? It's like, where do you start? How do you set a plan? What do you got to do first? What's the end game? Where are you going? And I think, that's the same thing with business too. So tell everybody your story about how you got to be a business coach and why you call yourself the GSD lady, or at least I call you the GSD lady. So fire away.
Sure. So back when I went to college, I started off as secondary ed and Spanish. So I started my career as a middle and high school Spanish teacher. As a middle and high school Spanish teacher, you really need to know how to get shit done because there's a lot of papers, there's a lot of everything. So I was really good at that. Fast forward 2006, I had twin boys. And I was standing in my home and realized it was exactly perfectly neat, organized. When people came to help me, I was able to say, oh, the diapers are on the left-hand corner, blah, blah, blah. So I decided to start my own professional organizing business.
Nice.
Yes, in 2007. And it was everyday tidy. And so fast forward to 2010 when Duke University Medical called and said, hey, lady, we see you know how to organize. Can you come and talk to us about organizing? So 2010, I started my speaking career, and that's where it's at. In 2017, I went for my certified business and professional executive coaching. 2019, I was accredited, and here I am.
Awesome. Yeah. So now I'm assuming that there is a bridge between organizing diapers and that has a lot of shit in it, right? Yes. Usually. So, it's that kind of shit to organizing business shit, which is different shit altogether. And does shit have an acronym with you, or is it just plain shit?
No, it's shit.
Okay.
Bullshit, real shit.
Yeah.
So it's about systems, Brian. Mm-hmm. It's about creating systems that will allow you to be more efficient and effective in your life, in your business. Because believe it or not, even though we're entrepreneurs, our businesses merge with our lives. And that's why we become entrepreneurs, for flexibility and having more time in our day.
So go ahead.
It's just about creating systems to help you run your business and your life simultaneously.
Well, I'm a huge systems guy. I mean, everything I do is a system. As a matter of fact, my second book or third book was called The Bacon System. It was about how to create content, how to measure the content. It really was about, I mean, it had three things. The core principle, the marketing trifecta is having a killer website, having Google Analytics, and then creating content to drive traffic back to the website and measure it. And that becomes a system. And then everything outside of that universe or the spikes off it is how you distribute the content to drive traffic back to the website to measure it and becomes a system. So I'm all about that. With business, though, business, if you sit down and look at it from a solopreneur standpoint, it seems really simple, right? We have less complication. We don't have as many people to deal with. We don't have, the same kind of issues, some of us working out of our homes don't have, location issues, different bills. I mean, it seems simplified, but when you break business down, it has, core functions, obviously. There's, first and foremost, you're not selling anything, you're not making any money.
Right.
So sales is a system. HR is a system. Even if you are not hiring full-time employees, if you're dealing with contractors, virtual assistants, vendors, those are considered, HR. And then you've got, finance, obviously. You've got to deal with the banking. You've got to deal with your QuickBooks. You've got to deal with loans, PVP loans. I've been dealing with that, and EIDL loans and EIEIO loans and, all that kind of fun stuff. And then on top of that, you have to deal with customer service. So, I mean, even as a solopreneur, there can be a lot of things to work with. So, I'm assuming you work with, not only small businesses, but big businesses. But what correlation do you see between solopreneurs and bigger businesses that's missing from the smaller guys?
So, delegation.
Okay.
The smaller guys feel like they have to do it all.
Right.
They feel that they can't let go of certain things within their business because they feel as though they won't have control. What I like to tell my clients is you can be in your business, you don't have to be on your business.
Right.
So just knowing and being in contact with people that help you as an entrepreneur and a solopreneur especially, it's going to take a village to grow. If you're looking to move to that next level, you're going to have to do some delegation. So for example, myself, I do not like QuickBooks. I don't want to learn QuickBooks. I don't want to figure it out. So I have a bookkeeper that helps me. That being said, the way I'm in my business is we have meetings quarterly, making sure that everything's all set, and I double check myself. So it's about delegation and having good communication with those that you entrust in your business.
Yeah, which totally makes sense. And one of the things that I try to say is work to your strengths and hire to your weaknesses. And I
So,
think, go ahead.
my apologies. And mine is do what you do best, delegate the rest.
Yeah, and I love that. Yeah, yours rhymes, mine doesn't. It's more better. Uh, but I think that's one of the hardest things, like you say, is being an entrepreneur. And I've run multiple different kinds of businesses. I mean, I had a team of 5 employees at one point. I've had, I've worked for major corporations. So I've worked for AT&T, Arthur Andersen. I've seen, how those big companies work and layers of management, and so I've seen how it all works, but when I started this company, I did everything I could to try to keep it all in-house. And when I finally broke through was when I realized, hey, sit down and figure out what you're good at. Am I good at writing? No, I suck at writing, but I'm good at idea generation. So how do you do idea generation and get it into a form and then hire somebody else to write for you? I'm on the opposite end. I've run so many businesses. I'm insanely into QuickBooks. I mean, I do every single Saturday morning, I sit down and balance my books, period, amen. And I go through and I look at those reports because I want to see the trends of what's happening, because as you're in the middle of the battle, you can't count the bullets. You know what I mean? And so at the end of the month, like it is now, I could sit down, look at it, say, oh, okay, this portion of my business dropped. Why? It's like, I mean, I have different things that I do. Like I'm looking at it and I'm going, wow, I haven't sold any books this year. I've got 5 books sitting on Amazon. Well, I know one of the reasons is I'm not going out and giving speeches, right? So I'm not meeting people in person and selling from the stage. That's one. But obviously, I'm under promoting my books on Amazon. I'm not talking about them enough. I'm not putting stuff out there. And so, that sparks you and says, okay, maybe you need to, just at the end of the year say, hey, what makes a great Christmas gift? Bacon. Right. But it sparks you to do things. So I think what you've got to really look at is, what are those things that, are going to, I think it's first and foremost, I think, in order to get stuff done, get shit done. I have to get used to saying shit because when I do my podcast, I don't swear. But in GSD, I think number one, it's about organizing things, right? It's about organizing, looking all the tasks. You could do it with sticky notes, you could do it with a mind mapping program, but you got to sit down and first and foremost, look at all the tasks, right? So how do you help people do that first?
So thanks for asking. I like to help my clients see their calendar as a large puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has 24 hours in the day. It is not time management. You cannot manage time.
Mm-hmm.
All you can manage is the tasks. That's why I like to say task management versus time management.
Mm-hmm.
So each task is a piece of the puzzle. And once you start placing the pieces of the puzzle in, you can actually turn it around, make sure it fits, see if it's really going to be where it is. So when we get the calendar going, like you said, I say to them, okay, let's talk about the various things that you do throughout the day. Daily, weekly, monthly, yearly.
Mm-hmm.
Those are 4 categories that we go through. And once they get that all out, it's a start, and we start plugging it into their puzzle. As we work together for either 60 days, 90 days, depending how long they want to work with me, things start to come up that they forgot about. And because a puzzle can be tweaked, we start tweaking as we go.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one way that I help my clients. The other way is I teach about work, life, ebb and flow.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that balance is bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
There is no balance. And let me explain why I feel like this. With a scale, when a scale is balanced, it doesn't move. Humans are 90% water. We are always moving. Even when we are sleeping, we are moving. Our mind is moving. Everything is moving internally. The only time we stop moving is when we die.
Mm-hmm.
I am a believer that I don't think we even move. We still move then. So,
right. Which is bad for business, by the way. Dying is bad for business.
Dying is bad for business. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so and I agree. I mean, if you sit down and look at the world, molecules, we're constantly moving. Everything's moving.
Right. So my ebb and flow philosophy is more like the waves of the ocean. The waves go in and out, in and out. So really understanding the waves of your life really can help you manage your time, your tasks more efficiently. So what do I mean by that? Well, when the tide goes out, you can actually see your toes. Your toes can wiggle in the sand. And when I teach my clients about that, that's my go. Go. Do those hard tasks. Get as much done as you can. That is your go. When the tide comes in, tide could come in slowly or quickly, where you could be submersed from your toes all the way up to your waist, depending where you are in the ocean. And that's more of a less mobile ability.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I tell my clients, okay, that's when you do tasks that are less cumbersome, doesn't need as much energy because you're focusing your energy on something else. And that idea of ebb and flow and being okay, it's okay that I slow down a little bit because I got this going on. And perfect example, I do this myself. I practice what I preach. So I'm a single mom. And I share my kids with their dad every other week. So from Monday to Monday, I have my boys once a week.
Mm-hmm.
That's when my tide is in and I'm waist deep in water.
Mm-hmm.
My priority. When they leave Monday afternoon, that's my go. And I go from Monday to the following Monday when I pick them up from school.
Mm-hmm.
And being okay with that, saying, you know what? It's okay that you focus on your kids because before you know it, they're going to be out of the house and then you have all the time. So I talk about mindset as well around productivity, task management, and delegation because predominantly my clients are women.
Mm-hmm. I'm so surprised.
Us women, we like to do it all. Delegation is hard for us.
Mm-hmm.
We don't like to ask for help as much as others do. So
Mm-hmm.
just learning to say, hey, I need some help and delegating a little bit more and it's truly about the mindset about being okay with doing tasks that are less, that require less effort.
Right.
Certain times of your life versus the times when you can literally push.
Okay, so back to your analogy. One of the things that I think that's important in this space is number one, we talked about systems, right? So when you have systems in place, it's easier to replicate things, number one. So for example, if you have a system and you document your system and you have it, I mean, the best thing that we can do as business owners is SOPs.
Right.
Even if you're a solopreneur, having a standard operating procedure of what you do, what is expected. Okay. Step, like, for example, I'll give you doing the podcast. Okay. So the first thing I have to do is find a guest, right? So I'm moving my thumb over so you can see. So, so first thing you got to do is find a guest, right? And then you have to have a pre-talk with the guest, all right, to make sure the guest is a good guest, right? You want to make sure that they can put together two syllables in the right,
Right.
put the right emphasis on the right syllable at the
And
right
they make
time.
you look good. Don't forget, they got to make you look good, Brian.
Right. Well, they do. Yeah. Well, actually, I just want them to come on and give some good information, right? They got to have a good point. If they're all, buy my crap, then they go away. It has to be something of value. Then I have to record it. Then after I record it, I have to make sure that I have their bio and their headshot. Then I edit it. Then I get it put up into, the online system that I have, which is a whole nother system. And then from there, then it gets published. Once it gets published, then it goes to my virtual assistant who then shares that across all my social platforms. And that is a system. There's a step by step, right? And that's a good example of having a system in place to get a particular task done. So when you start breaking big tasks down into the steps, it gets a little bit easier to manage, right? Because if something breaks down, you could sit here and I could plan editing and putting it up on social media, but if the person doesn't show up, I don't have a podcast, right? So you have to be flexible when that stuff happens, right?
Right. And that's part of the ebb and flow and flexibility and really understanding that shit happens.
Yep.
When it does, having systems and having a calendar that is solid, because you can move those puzzle pieces because you know how long a task is going to take you. So when stuff comes up and you're like, oh my God, I can't do A, B, or C, you know how long A, B, or C is going to take you, so you can move it to another day. The manipulating of a calendar is about really understanding how long things take you to do. I'd also like to point out something that's a little unique about me.
Okay.
Being an educator, I have been trained in multiple intelligences. So learning styles of people. And the first thing I do with my clients is have them take a test to figure out what their strengths are on learning. Because when I create a system with them, I want the learning curve to be zero to nothing. So I look at their learning styles. Are they auditory? Are they visual? Are they kinesthetic? Are they tactile? How do they learn best? And once we figured that out, the systems come super easily, because a visual person, if there's too many colors, it's a little bit too overstimulating for them.
Right.
So So the sticky notes, not a good thing. Some people, out of sight, out of mind, if they put things in their drawer, they won't remember them.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's more to creating systems than just trying to figure out what we need to do. It's also about the person who is creating the system and having them create something where they don't have to learn something new.
Right.
It's more of a pivot, a shift, a tweak, so that they could have a better system.
And see, that's relatively, I mean, the concept, I've heard a lot about this with and I've heard it as three. You said tactile and kinesthetic. I think those two similar, or are they not?
So tactile is with your hands, kinesthetic is movement. So there are people
Hmm.
that need to move, and that's how they learn, by movement and just getting out of their seats. So a lot of people don't even know that sitting in their seats is hindering their learning.
God, I didn't realize that there was a fourth category, because I knew auditory. I always thought that auditory was one, visual was one, and tactile was the third one. I thought tactile and movement were the same thing, where people need to get up and do something, but they are two separate things.
Yeah, tactile is more like hands-on.
Right.
Kinesthetic is movement. So like my boys are taking Latin,
Uh-huh.
and I told my one son that he needed to read his flashcards while walking around, because he's always moving. He like literally moves in his chair 24/7.
Wow.
So that helped him because he was able to move and get his energy out while getting his mind accustomed to the new words.
Gotcha. So like with the Flex Kincaid, or with the disc system and stuff like that, I'm assuming that there are levels to each one of those, right? Because when I was in school, we literally, you sat down at a desk, right? The teacher wrote stuff on the blackboard. You were expected to take notes. There was no iPhones, there was no calculators, there
Right.
was none of that stuff, right? And so I was forced into the box. And then I found out when I was, like right now, and it may be a joke, but it kind of isn't, is I always say I have DDA.
Yeah.
Right. Which is ADD and dyslexia, right? It's I always say dyslexics untie. That's my, ongoing joke. It's not meant to be a joke, it's not picking on people, but I can write books, but I can't read them. I sit down and read a book and I get nothing out of it. Now, if I walk my dog and I listen to an audiobook, I'm moving at the same
Right.
time, and I'm listening to something, and I get really, really, really great ideas, and it really sparks my imagination and gives me. And so I have an Apple Watch that when I'm walking the dog, because I'm listening and moving, I come up with an idea and I talk it into the watch. And then when I get back, I can look at the watch and then put it into something, capture it in Evernote, or capture it in a mind map or something like that. And that becomes the cornerstone of what I do. So there's that mix of everything, right?
So from what you're saying, you are kinesthetic
Hmm.
auditory.
Right.
You are kinesthetic auditory. You need to move while listening. And so it's never just one.
Right.
People are made up of many different learning styles. Just
Right.
some are more stronger than others. But for me, I'm a visual auditory. I need
Hmm.
to see it and hear it. I need to walk through it and hear you say stuff to me. So when I read a book, I actually have the book in my hand and I'm listening to it in an audio version.
Oh, wow. I've never seen anybody read and listen at the same time, but that's a good
Yeah,
idea. That's a
yeah,
great
it's
idea.
awesome. And I absorb more. It's
Hmm.
it's amazing. If I would have known this in high school and college, I would have been a genius.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, back then they didn't let boom boxes in class, so that wouldn't have
Yeah,
worked for
right,
me.
right.
Yeah. And you
But
couldn't
yeah,
wear headphones in class either, so that didn't work.
exactly.
Yeah.
It was yeah, not the same. But that being said, that
Hmm.
being said, the differentiated learning within the schools now is huge. And when I was in school, that was really starting to come up. So that's what makes me really unique as a coach,
Hmm.
because I'm very in tune to the client's learning style, how they can process. It's about process too. How are
Right.
you literally taking in the information and spitting it back out? So
Right. And that's exactly it. I mean, I've learned, and this is one of the things that, as a business owner and anybody in business, I don't care what you are, is the day you stop learning is the day you stop earning. You have to continually learn. That's one of the keys. If I stopped learning back when I started this business in 2000, I would still be doing business card CDs, right? I
Right.
wouldn't know about social media. I wouldn't know about, I wouldn't understand this whole year has been a journey for me. And I actually set out at the beginning of the year. I try to do this every single year. Try to set, okay, what do I want this year to achieve? And it was to better understand the mental acuity of people when they hear messages. When they see messages, when they hear messages, what are the things? And the last thing I was studying, which was real interesting. I mean, I know I'm going off on tangents, but I do have DDA, right?
We'll
But
just go with you. I'll just
yeah,
follow.
just run with it, right? But one of the
Yeah,
things I
yeah.
was listening to was have you ever heard of Blinkist?
Say that again. Blank.
Blinkist, Blinkist. Okay, what Blinkist is basically is it's an audiobook app that gives you basically cliff notes of books. Okay, so they'll give you an entire book in 15 minutes, How to Win Friends and Influence People in 15 minutes, War and Peace in 15 minutes. It could be a 100-page book, could be a million-page book. It doesn't matter. They keep it in that block. But what it does is it's got AI built into it. So when you start going down a path, it keeps going. So when you start talking about how does the brain process and how do we store memories, then all of a sudden it moves into AI. And the last thing that I've been listening to is, what are the different kinds of AI? There's AIR, there's ARN, there's a whole bunch of different things. But one of the things that this last audiobook I listened to talked about with AI was that you can teach AI to play a board game easily, right? Because it has squares, there's X amount of moves. It can process that block because it's in a confined space. But you can't teach a computer to play poker as well as you can to play chess because there's more randomness and it's
Right.
much, much, much harder. And so what that told, and the one thing that it also talked about is the fact that another thing that AI cannot do is empathy, right?
Correct.
It has no way to do empathy, and it goes down to that. And it's an old psychological. I don't know if it's a psychological test, but it's a conundrum of the train tracks, right? A train is barreling down. You have control of a switch, and you have something of value on one track, and you have something of value on the other track. And the question is, how do you make the value decision between which one is less important, right? You
Right.
know, I've heard it as a guitar and a stranger. I've heard it as your dog and five people. I mean, you can, however you mesh it up. It's like,
It's
so
all
I
the
think, go ahead. But I want to kind of throw that out there from a learning perspective of how we overcome this GSD, because, those are quandaries that we make. What are the ethical things that we're doing? What are the business things that we're doing? What are the family things we're doing? That's when you talk about that ebb and flow of
right.
the ocean. It's not as predictable often as, the tides, right?
Correct. So there's a component that I use with my clients as well.
Mm-hmm.
How to prioritize when you feel like everything is a priority.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what you're asking me. Like, how do we figure out what comes first?
Right.
And my solution to that is day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, there's going to be different things that we need to prioritize. And, I went into a company and I'm like, sometimes it's going to be like my boss needs this or I'm going to get fired.
Right.
Priority, or it's going to be like I'm sick and I have to stop. There's that old adage that if you don't take care of your body's going to take care of you and make you stop.
Right.
So this whole hustle and grind, I'm not about that. I don't believe in hustling, grinding, making yourself sick just to get ahead. I truly believe that when we are in flow,
Mm-hmm.
when we are literally in flow with our business, we are more productive, we up level more, we can do more. But if we're pushing or pulling, it's not as fun. It's
Mm-hmm.
not as productive. So truly understanding that prioritizing depends on what's coming up and really setting the stage for your week, your month, your year. So, like you said, you figure out what you want to accomplish in the next year, right?
Right.
So I tell my clients, if it's not a hell yeah, it's a hell no. If you're not passionate about it, if you don't really want to do it, then don't do it.
Right.
And this is mindset again, Brian. I'll be quite frank. It has taken me 46 years. Well, hold on. 40 years. 40 years to really understand that it is okay for me to be like, you know what? This isn't going to be of value to me. It's not getting me where I need to go. So no. And,
Yep.
and I actually teach people how to say no. So for example, a lot of people are like, well, people want to meet with me and stuff like that. I said, okay, so when people have their calendars all lined up, you know where you're going, what you're doing, what tasks you have every day, you can say no more efficiently and effectively.
Right.
So for example, if you were to say to me, you know what, Lori, I'd love to have you Sunday. And I was like, you know what, Brian, I thank you so much for offering me an opportunity to come on your show Sunday. Unfortunately, I can't this Sunday. My next available Sunday would be A, B, and C. Do any of these work for you?
Right.
Versus, and really being okay with saying no in an effective way where it's mutually beneficial to both.
Right. And, that is such an important test, but that goes down a slightly different path. And that is, when it comes to business, you have to learn to say no, and
Right.
I'll give you a clear-cut example of that is one of my one of the things that I made a clear-cut decision on is I will only work with B2B businesses. All right. I used to, when I started out, wrote my first book, I would work with people that sell to consumers. And I found out that I wasn't good with them. But when it came to B2B, I understood it very well because I had that corporate mentality, understood, the value. The bottom line is I understand the value system, the value propositions, and the WIFMs, what's in it for them, much better in the B2B side because B2B is a lot more predictable. It's much slower, right? I mean, it takes people 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, usually up to 2 years, 4 years to make decisions, so you have to have a lot more patience with it.
Right.
Where consumers, you can hit something, you could be the next pet rock, right? You could all of a sudden just hit it out of the park and it comes and it goes, right? And that happens all the time. You see people, make millions and then lose it all. But the thing about consumers selling to consumers, they're fickle. And they make decisions based on so many different criteria where businesses make decisions on business issues. One of the things I learned from another person I've had on here, Mark S.A. Smith, and the favorite thing he ever taught me, he says, it's really super simple to please a C-level person.
Right.
They have one thing in mind, and that is don't get me fired. That's all they want. They have to please their stakeholders, their stockholders, their employees, their vendors. They have a lot of people to please, but their one main driver is don't get me fired.
Yep.
Right. And so when you understand that, that's really easy. When you're dealing with consumers is I love myself, I hate myself, my kid is crazy, my car is bad. It's like it's all over the place. It's like I use this toilet tissue because a bear uses it in a cartoon on TV. No, it has absolutely nothing to do with anything. So when you break this stuff down, it's understanding the core of you and the priorities and the mindset is so important. Right.
Right. Yeah. And can I just go back a little bit?
Please.
So you mentioned that you have decided that you're going to work with only B2Bs.
Right.
So when I talk to my clients, I'm like, what are your non-negotiables? To me, that is a non-negotiable.
Right.
We as humans have certain values that we do not want to give up. And when we know our non-negotiables, business flows much more easily.
Mm-hmm.
And it is easy for you to be like, thank you so much. I'm so glad you want to be part of my network and stuff like this. Unfortunately, I only work with B2Bs.
Right.
So I really recommend you talk to blah, blah, blah. And that's one thing about you and I, that we have really strong networks where if we say no to someone, we have referrals.
And that's huge. Yeah, that is, it's what I call the golden Rolodex is,
Yes.
I have a golden
Yes.
Rolodex of people that if I cannot solve your problem, you can always come to me with a problem. I will listen to your problem. And if I have a solution for it, I will point you in that direction. And
Right.
one of the things about that too, and this goes back to networking, which is something that, we'll talk about another call, especially since I'm actually coming down to see you guys, you and Chuck and Raleigh.
Hey, Raleigh crew.
Yeah.
Actually, he's Raleigh. I'm more of the OC.
Yeah, you're the OC, right? Yeah, you're the OC. I love the OC. But but the concept is that in networking, I've heard people say, "Well, I only recommend one person." And that is such a huge mistake. And the reason that's a huge mistake is because when that one person lets the person down, it reflects 100% on you. What I try to do is, like, if somebody comes to me and say, "Do you know a plumber?" I say, "Yes, I know plumber 1, plumber 2, and plumber 3. Here are their 3 numbers. You go pick them and you talk to them and you decide which one best fits your needs and your budget and all that stuff." That way, when they pick plumber A and plumber A doesn't show up or screws up, right? It's not your fault. You say, they come back, "Well, that plumber sucks." Yeah. Well, what about B and C? Did you try to talk to them? What was wrong with them? What didn't you like? It's like, when you give one person, the onus is on you because you're recommending that. When you can give 3 people,
Right.
then now it's number one, it takes you a little bit more time to pull up 3 phone numbers, but the bottom line is it takes all the responsibility off of you. And it actually increases your time because it's no longer your problem, right? And that to me is kind of, it's kind of empathetic to what we're talking about today, which is understanding your no's. I cannot help your problem, but I have 3 issues, 3 people I could help you with, or I cannot help your problem and I have nobody to communicate with. I have no solution for this, so I'm sorry, I can't help you. And that's the power of no. We always, my mother was a pleaser, and that was always something that I was,
your dad was. Were they both Italian?
Yes.
That's the Italian in them.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It's like
my mother's a pleaser too. So
yeah. So and you've got the Italian in you. So my mother's a pleaser, so I always had that pleaser. I always want to make people happy. I always want to please everybody, and it took me a long time to understand you cannot please anybody, and B, it's not your job. You can do your best to help people, but you can't please everybody. And that becomes an issue. That's something I had to unlearn. You know what I mean?
So going back to the 40 years of learning.
Yes.
I have finally learned that if I say yes to me and please me, more people are pleased.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm taking care of me first.
Mm-hmm.
And that old adage, put your oxygen mask on first.
Right.
40 years of trying to figure that out. And I'm like, oh, now I get it. Yes.
Yeah. And it's a very hard lesson to learn because, especially in business, the whole concept of business, the whole thing that we're taught is you have to make the customers always right, and the reality of that is the customer is not always right. The customer is always important.
Correct.
But it doesn't necessarily mean they're always right. If you want them to come back and spend money with you, that's fine. But here's one of the things I do in my business is I have no contracts. I learned a long time ago. I've never I used to have contracts and people would sign contracts. And I learned this lesson where somebody came into my business, they spent $500, they paid it immediately, and then they ran up a bill of $5,000 and left, right? And so I had a contract and I said, okay, well, you need to pay me. Well, no, we're not going to pay you. Okay, so then I sued them. I won the lawsuit, and what the judge gave me was 50% of what they owed me, and the bill from the lawyer was 50% of what they owed me. So I spent 100 hours and all that time and paid my employees and paid for everything. And when it all came down to nothing, the lawyer made $2,500 and they got everything at half price and I got nothing. So one of the things I decided to do was say, okay, here's the deal. You're going to work with me, but I'm just going to send you an invoice every single month. And if you're happy, pay the invoice, and I'll do it again next month. If you're unhappy, tell me why you're unhappy, and we'll figure it out. And if you're super, super unhappy, if I really screwed up, then don't pay that invoice.
Yeah.
And guess what happens? The customers keep paying the invoice every single month, and 9 times out of 10, they're doing more because they're getting more than they expected, right? And so what I've learned to do is have the customer set their own expectations and not try to please them all the time. Let them be in charge of pleasing themselves. And that has really turned around the business. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and the first thing, I don't know about you, but for me as a business owner, I'm like, what do you want to get out of me? Like, why are you choosing me? What do you feel I can help you do?
Mm-hmm.
And they said that, and I'm like, okay, so what does success look like for you? Okay, now we got an end point. Let's work backwards.
But does everybody really know what that endpoint looks like? That's usually hard, I think, for some entrepreneurs.
No, I'm so glad you asked this. I'm giving you all my secrets, Brian.
Well, that's the whole point. That's why you're on here. Is you're giving away the secrets to everybody so they can learn something and be better.
Yes. All right. So this is what I do with my clients. It's called the 5-minute why.
The 5-minute why?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
So we take 5 minutes. I literally set a timer, and I'm like, why do you want to work with me? Why did you say blah, blah, blah? Why for 5 minutes? Because
do you drive them around in a car and put them in a seat in the back so they're just sitting there? Why? You know, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
So, and that gets to the core of what they really want, their why.
Mm-hmm.
Simon Sinek
I love that
why,
book.
remember?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Start with why. Yep.
Start with your why. So that's what I do. And that's how I get to the core. Because they think their why is here. But when they really start digging deep, and it takes a good 5 minutes, and I'm like, why do you want to do this?
Right.
They're like, oh, I don't know. Okay, so think about it. Why? And then after 5 minutes, I'm like, how do you feel about that? They're like, oh my God, I've never thought about truly why I started my business.
So if they and this may be a rude question, but since we're talking about getting shit done, so if they make it to the 5-minute time frame and the egg timer goes off and they still can't figure out their why, do you pull a trap door and drop them?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes, you know, they go into my dungeon and they stay with the wise down there until
Exactly. Yes. The evil wise, you know, they're two-headed monsters.
So to be honest, a lot of people still aren't done after 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, no, I believe that because that's a hard little question to do in 5 minutes. I know people who couldn't do it in 5 years.
So the reason I do this is because subconsciously, I love neuroscience.
Yes.
So I know that question is now embedded in their frontal lobe.
Mm-hmm.
And when they go to bed, because it's here, it's going to go into their subconscious and they'll dream about it. And I'm hoping that after 24, 48 hours, because I've done a 5-minute why, they're like, holy shit, now I get it.
Yep. Yeah. And I love that.
And it's a starting point. So and my why from 2007, when I started my business, is very different than why I'm doing my business today.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And that was one of the, one of the things that I learned through working with a business coach, which by the way, I've had tons of them, especially after I wrote my first book. I hired a speaking coach and then I moved into a systems I just had so many different coaches, but one of the coaches actually made me put up a vision board, and I go like, I don't want a vision board. I don't need that. She goes, no, you absolutely have to do it. And so I went out on Amazon, I bought the board and I put it up. My wife asked, what the hell are you doing? And what the hell is that? And what does it mean? And why is my picture not up there? And right. I had to explain that, and so it's like, it's got a picture of a moon. It's got a picture of golf. It's got a picture of a single story house. It has a picture of the beach. It has actually my perfect clients. and one of them is a male and one of them is a female, and they both have heads of dogs. And there's a whole reason behind that, but it's a long story. But it took me a lot, and I kept changing the pictures out and changing the pictures out, and finally, it all of a sudden really started to solidify the why. Really
Right.
kind of got me. It took that vision board to really get to the point of what am I doing, who am I working with, and why am I doing it? What's the purpose behind this? And once you
So,
understand that, it makes it so much easier. I have to agree with you 1,000%.
so there is a quote that I'm looking at. Here it is.
Okay.
So I follow this gentleman his name is Brad Lee.
Okay. I don't know him.
He's the CEO of Lightspeed VT.
Mm-hmm.
And he posted this on LinkedIn a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the core of everyone I work with is this: you are truly successful when you control how you spend your time.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody is looking for that. The bottom line, the why, is that they want to control their time.
Mm-hmm.
They want to say, I want to go do A, B, and C. I want to do X, Y, and Z. I want to do this when I want to do it. And that is what I help people attain.
See, I could not agree with you more. I could not agree with you more, because one of the things that I think people spend way too much time in business focusing on features and benefits and price and money, right? When really I always ask this question when I'm working with a new customer, and I say, what are you going to do with the free time that I'm going to give you?
Yeah. And that's what I do. And that's why I say, if you want to be more without doing more,
Right.
I can help you, because I finally got it. That's what everybody wants, Brian.
Right. Yeah. And it's not, and you know what happens 9 times out of 10 is they go deal with other problems. It's not like they're going out and playing tennis or golf or spending more time. But they can, if they don't have a problem to solve, they can go enjoy themselves more.
Right.
And that's really when you can give people back their lives, and you can get them into a place that, even clients that are, no matter what it is, that becomes the value proposition.
Correct.
Beyond all value propositions. And I think if that's the one takeaway everybody gets from today, is if you can help people value and utilize their time better through what you do, you're going to be a hell of a lot more successful. And I think you would agree with that, right?
True. Yes, I agree as well, because like I said, Bradley said, success. Oh, I have to look it up again because I keep forgetting it.
No, it's really good.
Hold up 1 second. I lost it.
That's okay.
We need to hashtag this with him.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I'll type it in to go ahead and say it again.
Okay.
What is it?
So he said, you are truly successful
Mm-hmm.
when you control how you spend your time. That's him.
Mm-hmm.
Bradley, LEA, CEO of Lightspeed.
Yep. That sounds like the 4-hour work week of what it's based on, but that's not necessarily the case. But that's the core principle, I think, of the 4-hour work week is something along that lines.
Right.
It's like you spending, the dream is to be on a beach and running your business, but reality, it's never going to happen.
That's for some people. Like my dream.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my dream. My dream is to do what I do and travel the world doing it. I love being on stage and talking to people and giving them nuggets of information. So for me, I want to be internationally recognized as the get shit done girl.
Right. I love it. Yeah, I absolutely love it. Okay, so let me ask you, because we're literally the beauty of what we do here on Bacon and Coffee, okay? Because we are so jacked up on caffeine that you don't even realize that there's only 10 minutes left in the hour. It doesn't even feel like it, right? So that's the beauty of what most people don't understand about Bacon and Coffee. It is supercharged. And so the last thing I have to ask you about, and I have 2 different scenarios that I'm going to bring to this table with to close this out. All right. You talk about ebb and flow of being in the water, right? Okay. So, when your toes are showing, you start kicking, right? When your knees are underwater, you can't move as fast. You can still move, but you can't do it. But there's this other thing, which I remember as a little kid, called undertow, right? So you're standing there and all of a sudden you're standing in the water and you get this undertow, and the undertow drags you out into the ocean. And this is really important. I think you need to learn how to swim before you get in the ocean, because if you don't know how to swim when you get undertow, you're dead. And so that's one of the things you have to do, is be able to prepare. Now, let me give you two examples of undertow. When you talked about that dream, my business coach asked me, she said, "What's your dream?" I said, "My dream is to play every major golf course in the United States. And the way that I do that is I'm going to give speeches to corporations at those golf courses, at conferences. And part of the deal is I will negotiate a free round of golf at Pebble Beach, at, all the ones that, I forget what all the ones in North Carolina are, but I will figure those out." But that was the goal, right? Okay. So then all of a sudden I'm standing there and I'm working it, and all of a sudden the pandemic hits and all speaking is shut down, and I got to rebuild that from scratch. Okay. So I got pulled out to sea with the undertow, but I still know how to swim. So I got back to shore and figured out what to do next. Right. The other one that happened was I was running my business, just running along this year in the middle of a pandemic, doing all that stuff, and lightning struck our house, physically struck the brick, popped the brick, hit a tree, and killed every electronic in my business. And it shut me down for 2 solid months. It took 2 months to get everything back together. And again, the undertow came out. But the beauty is that I had insurance. All right. So the insurance covered, all the equipment, covered part of the lost time. And now I'm sitting here back standing in the water and I can see my toes, So I think part of this is not only just being that happy clappy, but also thinking about understanding what can happen when you're knee deep in that water. Right.
Right. And those are the oh shit moments.
Yes.
And I tell my clients, and I'll tell everybody, like, if you truly set yourself up, like you set yourself up,
right,
where you're like, okay, I got insurance, let me go deal with that. Pandemic hit, let me go deal with that.
Right.
That's a pivot. So many companies pivoted because they're like, let me think out of the box. What can I do?
Right. And okay, so when the pandemic first hit, and there's one last thing I want to add to this convo. When the pandemic hit and we were at the beginning of 2020, and it's like, it was an oh shit moment for everybody, right?
Right.
And what I said was, don't panic, pivot. Everybody hated that word. Everybody hated it. And it was like, I couldn't even use that without people just, basically vomiting on me. And what I tried to, then I did a blog post about it. I said, well, you got to understand what a pivot is. You don't know pivot. Everybody thinks of Ross trying to carry the couch up the stairs, but
right.
But pivot is where you put your foot in basketball, you pivot, you have a pivot foot, and then you get 360 view of what's around you. And then you can figure out how to pass the ball, right? That's what a pivot is. And it's like, but you got to keep the ball moving. That's the whole point, right?
Right. So there was this one company that's here in North Carolina, and they do only buffets.
Mm-hmm.
And during the pandemic, they totally shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to self, you should probably go tell that CEO that he needs a mobile camera where people can log in and choose their stuff as if they're going through the line of the buffet
mm-hmm.
and do a pickup. But instead, they just shut all the way down.
Wow.
Like literally, I don't even know if they're open anymore. But that type of mentality we have as entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, because we have a different mind.
Right.
And those of us that are good at business, that are ready to do whatever it takes to have the freedom to choose, can pivot and will. Yeah. And my big thing was I pivoted and said, okay, let me go get my e-speaker certification. Let me show you I know how to present on Zoom. Let me show you what I can do. Even though I'm not live, I still got the energy and everything else. And I got my e-speaker certification.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what you have to do. You have to figure out, okay, what can I do with what I have here, and that's huge. I think you have to be able to learn to do that. So, so the bottom line to getting stuff done, getting shit done, is number one, you have to figure out your own shit, right? You have to figure out, what's important to you. You have to figure out why. You
Right.
have to have a control of your calendar and your time and make a plan.
Correct.
You have to be able to understand how to deal with adversity. You have to know when to hold them, when to fold them, all that kind of fun stuff.
Correct.
And then
Yeah.
the last thing that you really have to do is you have to be willing to invest. Okay, that's one of the things I will say, and I've said this numerous times. You always have to invest in yourself. Is the thing that pays the most dividends. So, and I have a meme. I call them baconisms. They're actually just quotes from speeches that I give. That's one of the things that I do. Is when I come up with a really good idea in a speech, I put it in a graphic and then I throw it up on social media, and I keep using it over and over and over again. And one of my favorite ones is every doctor needs a doctor. Every mentor needs a mentor. Every coach needs a coach. You cannot see the forest from the trees. It is impossible, no matter how
That's
hard you
right.
do it. You,
Yep.
as an entrepreneur, solopreneur, cannot go it alone. So you either need to be in a mastermind group, you need to have a coach, you maybe need both of those. You've got to do something to get your mind in the right place, because there are a lot of times, when we should all over ourselves. There's a
Right.
lot of times where we miss opportunities because we can't see it. And, the bottom line is we tend to tie our shoelaces together and get in our own ways, right?
Right. And Brian, I just want to point out that investing in yourself doesn't always mean monetarily.
Right.
So I have business buddies that I have really great relationships with. And I'm like, okay, so I have accountability partner. My one
Yep.
accountability partner today, this week, this month is Kelly Hendrick. She and I are both executive coaches.
Mm-hmm.
We are both looking to up level our businesses. We're ready to take it to the next level. And she and I are not only friends, but we're in the same space. So after you and I are here, I'm going to meet with her and be like, okay, where are we at this week? We meet every 2 weeks. We contact each other. Boom. She's my accountability partner.
Mm-hmm.
My business buddies are Hank Hoffmeyer, Chuck Hester, and Nelson Santiago. And I go to them. I'm like, today, I was like, hey, FYI, blah, 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 blah. He's like, too late. Can't do it. Move on. I'm like, all right, thanks. There's just people in your life that you can bounce ideas, and there's reciprocity.
Right.
It's about being receptive and doing it both for them, and they help you, and that you help them, and back and forth and back and forth.
Right. And that's what masterminds are. I mean, a lot of ways and other things. And having, like I say, when I say a coach, it's accountability partners. It's all of those things. You need to
Right.
have other people in your business. You have to invest in yourself. You have to invest time. You have to invest money too. I mean, you have to invest in some training. It's like, that's why I pay for Blinkist. I mean, I went and got master class. I learned as much as I could from that and stopped it. Doesn't mean you have to, subscribe to something and never unsubscribe. You have to learn how to say, I'm done. No, it's finished. So all those things are important. So this has been awesome. We literally have 3 minutes left. So what I want to do, isn't that amazing? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the stage, and I want you to tell everybody. So I'm going to put on your banner, so if people want to get a hold of you, how to get a hold of you, and then tell them, just a little bit about you and, what you do, how you get to know people, how to connect with you, that kind of fun stuff.
So you can find me often on LinkedIn, because that is where I give lots of content. I do lots of videos, lots of inspirational things. You can also find me on Instagram and on Facebook, all with Lori Bruhns, LLC. If you are ready to be more without doing more, and use the resources you have to get to your next level, please consider working with me, because I really enjoy what I do. And as you heard here today, I have some great nuggets to help you be more without doing more. Also, if you're looking for a speaker, I am a keynote speaker, and I'd love to work with your company and help them be more without doing more.
So my final idea for you is you need 2 giveaways for everybody, okay? You need waterproof shorts, so when the water gets up to their waist, they have a bathing suit. And then you need sandals with your name on it, so people could look down at their toes when the tide goes down, and they could see, you know. And they need to obviously go get a pedicure, but have sandals with your name on it, so when they're looking down at their toes, they remember you. That's my 2 marketing ideas for you today. How's that?
That's awesome. Yes, I love it. So you can be more without doing more on the little toes.
Exactly. Yeah, you can do that. So, all right, Lori. Hey, this was a blast. Thank you so much for coming on. It is so fun and such great
Brian.
stuff.
This was awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I think everybody got a lot of good nuggets at it. So I'm going to play our bacon and coffee outro, and I will see you guys again next week, probably with Mark S.A. Smith, since it's the beginning of the month. Y'all have a good one. Lori, you have a great day. Thank you so much.